a few words about my dad. And I'll warn you now, I'm going to cry. That's okay. We really want to thank you all for coming. It means a lot to us. You know, my dad was a very humble man, and he was a very giving man. And when he found out his cancer was going to be terminal, we asked him what he wanted to do. And his last wish was to donate his body, actually, to the medical school. So future physicians are going to be trained thanks to his gift. And so, you know, he didn't really care one way or another about what we did, but we know that this is more for us to get some closure on the wonderful man our dad was. So I was thinking about telling a story, and I was trying to think of a memory that would really capture the essence of my father, who was always a very understanding man. And when I was 14, I was going through a big hair phase, and I wore leather jackets and a lot of eyeliner, and I wanted to go see Ozzy Osbourne. And mind you, this was before Ozzy Osbourne was a reality TV star. This was when Ozzy Osbourne was a bit of a rebel. And none of my friends were allowed to go, but one of them was. And so my dad got tickets for us, and he drove us to the Meadowlands, and we were pulling into the parking lot, and there's all these guys with long hair and piercings playing frisbee and barbecuing, and I think this is great. And my dad, completely even keeled, just looks at me and goes, "Is this the kind of crowd you want to associate with?" And so then we went, my friend and I went to the concert. My dad waited in the car. I think he read a book, and then we came out at like 11 o'clock at night. He's like, "Oh, it sounded pretty good. I could hear some of it from the car." And then he took us to McDonald's, and he drove us home, and I think the poor man had to go to work the next day, and he didn't once complain. So that's how he was, and that's, you know, why it was so great to have him as a dad. And then as we were planning this, we were really touched with the number of people who were willing to come and travel from, you know, far away to be here to help us honor him. And I was joking with my sister and my husband. I'm like, wow, 60 people are coming to honor my father. He would have hated that. And my dear mother-in-law had offered to throw him a birthday party when he turned 70. And so I brought it up with him, and he's like, no party, because he didn't want anyone to make a fuss over him. You know, he wanted to be the one fussing over people. We always say, you like to hover over us, you know, make sure everything's okay, everything has to be perfect. And he likes to give that. He did not want to receive that. He was a very humble man. He was also a very organized man. And after my mom passed away, he put all his financial documents in his will and everything important in a green satchel. And he put it in his closet, and every 6 months he would remind me, if I die, all my papers in the green satchel in the closet, which seemed at the time kind of morbid. But, you know, then he passed away, and I'm like, oh, I know where to go, the green satchel in the closet. And there it was. And as you all know, this all came on very quickly. Christmas he was fine, you know, and New Year's he was fine, and then he went to the doctor with a backache at the end of January, and, you know, they diagnosed the cancer, and he literally passed away 6 weeks to the day that he first went to the doctor with a backache. And when it all happened, I was glad that we had spent so much time with him when he was healthy. You know, I certainly didn't have any regrets about that, but I remember thinking, I just thought he was going to live longer, and I thought we'd have more time to say goodbye. But then that night I started thinking, well, maybe that's what he would have wanted. You know, I mean, it was 6 weeks, but he wouldn't have wanted to linger, and he hated being sick. He didn't want anyone to have to take care of him, because that meant he couldn't be taking care of people. So I was kind of thinking along those lines, and then I went through the green satchel that he carefully organized, and he had very few personal effects in there, not many mementos, but the last piece of paper I found was actually a poem that my sister had written about 15 years ago. And reading it, it just really reassured me that the way he went was the way he wanted to go. So I just want to read this for you. It's called Something More by Victoria Rentz. I don't want to grow old, the kind of old where you can't remember your children's names, how to get to the store, how to add and subtract. I don't want to be sick all the time, with tubes sneaking in and out of me, machines breathing for me. When I die, let it be a quick vanishing, like a bolt of lightning, electrifying, illuminating, and amazing, and let there be something more. And I'm glad he's with Mom now. Hello?
So yeah, everything that my sister said is, of course, true. And what I always liked about my dad is that I always felt like I could be myself around him. And I know that, some of my friends or, family might think, they don't enjoy spending time with their parents, or it's more work for them because they feel like they can't be themselves around their parents. And I always felt like I could be, and that's a real gift. And to know that even if I wasn't related to my dad, I still would have liked him, which is also a real gift. And he always had a dark sense of humor, and he liked to think of himself as a curmudgeon. But of course, he always, which is funny because in reality he was total opposite. Like, he always wanted to see the most positive parts of people. Like when my sister was dating a long distance trucker at one point when we were living in Boise. And so she's like, oh, so Alice, tell me about this guy you're dating. And she's like, well, he's a long distance trucker, so technically he's homeless. And he was like, oh, that's great, no rent. That's great. I mean, when her dad would be like, oh, that's great, you're dating a homeless guy. But that was just the way he always wanted to see the best in people and see the best about the people we knew and the people that we were dating and our friends. And every time I went home to visit him, he'd be like, oh, so how's Karen doing? How's Meredith? How's Ann? Well, what's up with Rachel? What's up with Ellen? He'd always ask about my friends and how they were doing. And when I wanted to do Jesuit Volunteer Corps in Camden, I was 32 at the time, I guess, and most people would do it right out of college and, don't have much, they're not sort of established yet. And so I had to, if I wanted to do this, I had to move home with him, live with him for 8 months in a one-bedroom apartment, rent-free, which he let me do. He shared with me for 8 months his apartment and let me do that so I could save up money so I'd be able to do this. And I wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't for him, and also if it wasn't for Alice taking in my cat for the year. And he made it work, and he knew it was what I wanted to do. And instead of saying, you're crazy, you want to be poor for a year and live in a ghetto and live in Camden, and but he totally supported it, and he just always wanted us to do what we wanted to do, which is also a great gift. And he always loved his cats, as we all know, especially from the slideshow of the different cats he's had over the years. When we had outdoor cats, Smokey and Shadow, who wouldn't come inside, they were very shy. When we lived in Oakland, he built them an insulated cat house so they wouldn't be cold in the winter. He was always, doing for his family and his pets. And of course, when his cat Buster died, who was originally Alice's cat, who he took in, and he was so upset. Remember, he said, I'll never get another cat. I won't go through that again. I'll never get another cat. Then 10 days later, he brought home Gizmo. Like, he couldn't live without a cat. He always had to have a pet to take care of. And Gizmo had been abused, and he'd had a hard life, and he was kind of shy at first, but he warmed right up to my dad, and they were inseparable pretty much after the first few days. I also received a nice email from the animal shelter a few days ago, thanking them, saying all these donations have been pouring in his memory for take care of the animals. So anyone who's donated already, and if you're planning to, then that's great. We really appreciate it. It's what my dad would have wanted, I think. I guess the last thing I wanted to say is about my mom, and I don't even know if I've ever told you this, but when she was sick a few months before she died, it was May, and I was home just hanging out with her. It was a couple months before she died, and we'd been listening to that Mark Cohn song, True Companion. It was kind of popular then, or had come out. So we had his album on and we were listening to it, and I was like, so, you really, always thought it was a good idea that you married Dad, kind of trying to get the real scoop, because, they've been married for 32 years at that point. It's a long time to spend with one person, and they've had ups and downs, and there've been hard times and financial trouble. It hadn't gone smoothly all the time, and I said, so you really feel like he was the person you should have married? And she was like, oh, absolutely. I mean, she didn't even hesitate. And I said, really? You never had second thoughts, never any doubts or anything? And she said, oh no, he's my true companion. He was the one I was supposed to be with, and I think he was like that for us too. He was a true companion for all of us. And that's all I wanted to say, and thank you so much for coming, and this is really nice. Thank you.
We'd like to open it up if anyone else wants to say a few words about our dad. It's open mic time now.